are listening to the Chompcast, the official podcast of Sword Chomp. And remember, you can always go to swordchomp.com, and that's a place where you can access all of the many places our podcast is available for you to download. But if you're listening to the show right now, that means you found us. So welcome.
Good job.
Good job. Good job. Sorry, Josh. I intentionally interrupted you there. A murder fest of a show today, in more ways than you might think. The topic of the show is the phenomenon that has taken over gaming right now. That's right. We are launching out of our proverbial airplanes and parachuting right into your headphones or speakers. 4 podcasters enter, and hopefully all of us make it out alive as we discuss battle royale games and the genre, most importantly, that has taken over gaming lately. Most importantly, Fortnite is a game that we have all been playing quite a bit this week. And of course, that leads to a little PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds discussion being the first. We've been playing just so much Fortnite, and we are excited to get our thoughts out there. They just crossed 40 million players recently. So Morgan and Shea have been dealing with both sides of the side quest coin as they discuss a bit more Gravity Rush and Nier. A little teaser there, as well as one fiery final slash of a Hellblade, as Shea has some important final thoughts after finishing the game. The bio break this week, it has kind of a jazzy feel to it, and I won't reveal any more just yet. And Fish and me rekindle our middle school adolescence with a few bouts of Final Fantasy Dissidia. That was a big mistake. Our listeners are fans of kissing? What? That doesn't make sense. Well, I got more on that later too. And we have an awesome listener email and so much more. You don't want to miss it. I am out of breath from this long ass fucking intro, but that means it's going to be a fun show. Let's get to some intros. Introduce the crew that we love, that I love. I know that's for sure. Up first, the one and only, the Filipino Johnny Depp. From Texas, Fish is here. Fish, I made fun of you a few weeks ago. I mocked you. I was laughing at your feeble aging Asian bones when you told me you slipped on some ice. You were complaining about being sore. You remember that?
Yeah. Still hurt by it. Still recovering from that nasty wound
And
that you inflicted on me.
Both wounds, yeah, the real one and my wound. Because I'm a jerk. And you know what? It might have been karma, because this week I slipped on some ice, and I can tell you I was also in a great amount of pain for days.
Yes! Karma!
It gets better. It gets better. You were really sick, and I was giving you shit about, just complaining about you're unhealthy, and you're vaping this, and that's probably why you're sick, and blah, 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 you whiny bitch. And then guess what? I got sick. I got sick earlier this week. I was having trouble sleeping.
Sorry, I just can't help but laugh at you right now. Keep going.
But the last straw, last night, for the first time in years, I was also unable to please my wife in bed. And much like you, and you know what? The curse has to stop, Fish. I don't know what you've done, but you need to lift this curse from me.
You got married this weekend?
That's the joke of the show. I just call her my wife from now on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that was a pretty good laugh you gave me. Most of that laugh was muted by me, but yes.
Don't mute your laughs. We all want to hear your chuckling soul over there. So, your curse, whatever you did, Fish, karma, whatever you want to call it, I'm feeling it. So, I take it all back. I don't want,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I accept it. I accept your apology.
I don't want generations of my family to also have sexual ineptitude, okay? So whatever it is, just please.
Right.
There's only going to be so many of those.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
With
true.
his two daughters? Yeah.
God, don't remind me. I love my daughters more than anything, but I am just killing the family line. Glad to have you here this week, Fish. And I'm going to pivot away from that conversation to introduce our next co-host, my good friend, Shea Layton from Japan, joining us. Shea had a fantastic joke planned for you today, but I think I'd rather just pivot maybe to something else. How do you feel about that?
Okay.
That's it? You got nothing else for me?
No.
Well, to let our listeners know, Shea wants to be coy. Me and Shea have been arguing about the word pivot all day long. I tweeted today. I said Fortnite is the greatest pivot in gaming history, and Shea, being the educated that man he is, did take issue with that. So
It's true. It's true.
Okay. Okay. Nothing at all. You don't want to defend yourself?
Nah, I already made my point.
It's coming around. The greatest pivot in gaming history, Fortnite.
I'm not gonna be baited in.
Well, just, I know it's going to be a good show if Shay's arguing with me a couple hours beforehand. We're arguing about Fortnite. We're arguing about pivot. We're just arguing all day. And we got to make up on the podcast. That's how it works.
Only if it ends in mucusy sex.
Mucusy. I don't like the sound of it. If you couldn't tell, Shay is very sick over there in Japan. I can see him on the webcam. Looks like he's wearing a parka. They have weird laws in Japan, so he's not allowed to buy headache medicine. It's been a rough day for him.
It's been a great day.
And he's here. He's podcasting. You can hear Come on, Shay. Give us some enthusiasm. God.
Yeah.
I'm getting sick just listening to you over this goddamn thing. All right, well, Shay's here.
I love Destiny too.
Okay, there. Now we know he's really not feeling well.
It's true.
Thanks for being here. I know you're not feeling well, so better have
No
a little
problem.
Shay. Better have a little Shay than no Shay. That's what she said. And lastly, here from Michigan, the one and only Joshua Fowler is here. And Josh, so glad you could be here this week. You did great work on the podcast picture last week. If you go to swordchomp.com, if you're listening, you can see the picture Josh made for our podcast. Last week, if you missed the show, we talked about bug testicles. And Josh photoshopped a really cool photo of a bug flying around with a giant pair of black saggy nuts. And I gotta say, Josh, I love the idea of you just like meticulously hunched over your computer, photoshopping this giant pair of testicles onto an insect. That's how you spent your whole day or a couple hours a day. That makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really helps to be able to match up angles when you're photoshopping, just to have a nice portfolio of testicles you can draw from.
Okay.
For any job that you may come across.
So you could build your portfolio out of this if you're ever going for a job interview, and just the many ways you have Photoshop. You know what? I like that idea. The many ways you could Photoshop testicles onto things. Different testicles. Yeah. I like it.
A testicle for every mood.
The real that sounds like I don't even know. I was gonna say something a porno, but it's not quite right.
Interesting.
It
sounds interesting.
Josh, I gotta say this though. All that time you spent photoshopping testicles on the bugs, still a better use of your time than watching the Overwatch competitions. Nothing? We're going to have to edit all the silence out, Josh. The listeners don't like all this awkward silence you're leaving there for me.
Yeah. I may have to edit in 5 or 6 more seconds of silence there, just so we know exactly how well that joke went.
I think that's a really good idea. As one of the 4 hosts, I vote yes for that motion. Yeah, sprinkle in some coughs. I think we're good.
I think you should actually get one of those crickets with some testicles to chirp in the background as you add that silence.
That would be nice. Now, sound effects I'm okay with. Even if the joke lands, I'm okay with the crickets. Well, that's all I gotta say. Actually, I did a poll on that earlier this week too on the Instagram, and most people were in favor of esports. I did get a couple messages from people who just said I didn't know what I was talking about. Playfully, they weren't rude or anything. They were just like, yeah. I was just like, I'm sorry. I want esports to be successful because I think it's great for video games. I just can't fully appreciate it. But I am glad you really enjoyed it, Josh. It sounds like you're still the competition is still going on right now. It sounds like.
Yeah. Actually, I was just watching those games before came up to record. Although first 2 games tonight were pretty one-sided, so yeah, it was a good time to podcast. Hopefully we'll get out here in time for a closer match after the podcast here. So
cool, good deal. Well, thanks for being here, and of course, I'm Morgan Barnes from Montana, and I'm excited. We got a great show today, as we mentioned earlier. So let's get right into it. The topic of the show is basically this whole battle royale phenomenon that is sweeping the gaming world, and it started last year with the mini phenomenon that was PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, and now Fortnite has just exploded. Now, the big deal with Fortnite, to set this up, is it was designed, of course, by Epic Games, of Gears of War fame and whatnot, and Fortnite was a game that was in production for a long time. It was like a running joke in the gaming world that like Fortnite was never going to come out. People were like, didn't believe it was a real thing. Like, is Fortnite even a real fucking thing? But it was kind of not an exciting concept. It was basically sort of like Minecraft, like sort of a more intense Minecraft kind of zombie horde mode sort of thing they were going for. And people weren't really excited about it. And it released. And it was fine. But they brilliantly decided to pivot and create... Shea's giving me a thumbs up. And create this Fortnite Battle Royale mode that has now become the phenomenon it is. I think it's like over 40 million people play this game. So it is insane. And that's because they took the idea that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds made so popular, and they've made it very accessible to everyone on console. They've brought it to a very playable AAA game. I mean, say true about Fortnite, it's a very polished AAA game that was in production for years and years, where like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds is kind of very janky and stuff. It's charming, but very janky. And it's free. It's free. Like, me and Fish played it with each other this week. We didn't pay a goddamn dime, and we could even play online with each other without like a PS Plus account or anything on PS4. So, a perfect storm, as I like to call it in the gaming world, for a phenomenon. And for a phenomenon, you need a perfect storm. And I think 40 million, it's fair to say we have a phenomenon in our hands. I mean, people thought it was a big deal when PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds sold 2 million copies. So, anyways, my starting point, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on this before I ramble on too long. I want to kind of set the stage. That's the topic of the show, the Battle Royale phase we're in right now. My starting point is that, remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about, we had a podcast about first-person shooters. I guess it would have been right around the Wolfenstein time, and when we played Wolfenstein 2 for the first time, and we talked about how there just wasn't a lot of innovation in the genre. And I think in my heart what we're seeing with the success of both PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and Fortnite is, for years and years and years, first-person shooters are so popular, but people have just been hungering for something different, something new, something that sort of reinvigorates the genre, and then they finally got it, which was this sort of take on the Hunger Games phenomenon kind of a thing that, you know, has kind of become the rage over the past 5 or 10 years. And they took that concept and the first-person genre and kind of spun it on your heels. And that's my starting point, but I want to kind of know how you guys feel about the genre, maybe how you feel about what I said, etc. Fish, I'll throw it to you first. I know we've been playing a lot this week, and you played PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds quite a bit. Last year. It was in your top 5 games of the year. Very controversial list you had, by the way, but in your top 5 games of the year.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept to have, 100 players jump into one arena, one big map, and essentially you could go in as solo or duo, but like it just feels like a free for all at that point. Like, I think the tension immediately comes as soon as you jump out of that. It's a flying bus with like what is that?
Fortnite, the battle bus. You're talking about Fortnite specifically.